Hey guys, happy Monday and welcome to episode 8. Today we're going to be discussing the 1996 film directed by Ron Shelton, Tin Cup. Now, guys, this is one of my absolute favorite movies and I watch it multiple times throughout the year. I'm going to break that down for you and give you my thoughts. Okay, so this movie came out in 1996. It was shot primarily in Arizona and in Texas. They did it for like $45 million, and it actually made a little bit of money. Not like a tremendous amount of money, but it made $75 million off a $45 million budget, and it garnered mostly good reviews. Now, the reason I'm covering this movie is because it's one of my absolute favorites, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more. Normally, I try to focus on films that are a little bit lesser known, stuff that I feel like it's underseen. I think a lot of people might have seen this movie. I still think there's quite a few people that haven't seen this movie. I feel like there's also a section of society that has seen the movie and blows it off as just a light romantic comedy. Personally, I think that is the core of the movie, but I feel like equally there's more to the movie than just a light romantic comedy. And I'm going to delve into that later on, probably when I wrap around the whole episode at the end. But I'll get to that. So in our main cast, we have Kevin Costner, starring as our main lead, Roy McAvoy, otherwise known as Tin Cup. We have Renee Russo playing Molly Sims, Dr. Molly Griswold, excuse me. I'm getting that wrong, guys. We have Cheech Marin playing Costner's best friend and caddy, Romeo Poisson. We have Don Johnson playing the arch nemesis, the role of David Sims. So that's our main cast. Now to get into the actual movie. When we start our movie, we open it up with Costner, Mr. Roy McAvoy himself, and Romeo in the golf club in this little small rundown driving pro range. They're in like the snack area, and they're hanging out, and there's a bunch of other their buddies that are the regulars that hang out with them there and work there, and they make stupid bets, like a lot of guys, stuff like, hey, I wonder which bug's gonna hit the bug zapper first, or which crow is gonna fall off the telephone pole. That's the kind of deep, meaningful conversations these guys have. So, in this particular instance, our man Tin Cup poses a riddle, and he's like, hey guys, I'm gonna pose a riddle for you. It doesn't take too many brain cells to, rub together to figure this one out. But if by some chance you guys can't figure it out, we'll just say I won the bet. And they're all like, okay, yeah, that's fair. Well, needless to say, he poses the bet. He poses the riddle, excuse me. And no one can come up with the proper answer to this riddle. So, at this point, in walks Dr. Molly Griswold. And right off the get-go, she answers the question to the riddle. I guess she had been listening this whole time, just hadn't seen her. From there, Molly Griswold, we'll just say Molly, make my life easier on myself, and Tin Cup, Roy McAvoy, they proceed to go outside, and Tin decides to give his theory on golfing and the perfect swing, and essentially he says, the perfect swing is about gaining control and letting go at the same time. And she's like, well, yeah, that's fine, because he tries to show her, but she's like, I process things better through words, and then that's why he kind of brings that whole idea of letting go and gaining control at the same time. Figured that would be more helpful for her to maybe to process and to improve her swing. She fumbles. She's wearing all this ridiculous golf equipment that apparently she got off like Home Shopping Network or something, and he makes fun of her. He's like, that's all garbage and none of it works. He says, you're an intelligent lady. There's no reason for you to be using this stuff. It's all a bunch of gimmicks. And then he proceeds to say, listen, when in doubt, just grip the golf club and let her rip, And so this is like our first introduction between our two main characters. You can see right off the get-go that Tin Cup is pretty smitten with Molly. Their first lesson ends, and the next day we cut to a little Winnebago that's on the same property of the driving range row, and we see Romeo outside, and he's putting his feet in this little kiddie pool. He's outside just chilling, and in pulls up this fancy car, and in this car is David Sims. We're introduced to David Sims for the first time, a professional golfer that's been doing it for many, many years. He's like, hey, have you seen Tin Cup? I have a proposal for him. And he's like, Romeo's like, we don't want anything to do with you, man. Like, what do you want? Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, I have an opportunity to work. I'm hosting a tournament, and someone with Roy's expertise would be a wonderful addition. So at this point, Roy appears out of the Winnebago, and he's like, okay, tell me more. So Sims proceeds to tell him the whole deal. And Roy's like, okay, I'm in. He's like, I'll knock birdies off all day, man. I'll be a birdie making machine. We'll kill it. And Sims is like, oh, no. Hold on. I don't want you to get the wrong idea here. I don't want you to play next to me. You're still some unknown, man. I'm looking for somebody in my caddy. He's like, what I'll do is I'll give you $100 and then a portion of whatever the tournament win is, And, Romeo's like, we don't need that, man. We don't need that. It's the hell of this, This is bullshit. But Roy is a little more realistic, and he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, fine. So we cut to the very next day, and it's this tournament, and David Sims is there with all these other golfers, and Roy's, being his caddy, and David Sims is doing all the safe shots in the world of golf. He's doing okay. He's so at this point in the game, he's a little bit ahead of everyone else. Roy's like, man, take some chances. You can pull off some of these chances. You don't have to just make par. You can come out ahead, do an eagle or a birdie, and like kill the course record, man. You can do this. You have a clear lead. You're fine, and David Sims is like, no, I want to play it smart. I want to win the tournament. I want to win the purse. And Roy proceeds to kind of make fun of him. He's like, dude, what a fucking chicken, come on, man. You've been a professional golfer for how long, and this is what you're doing. And essentially, he says quite loudly, he's like, I could make these shots easy, and there's one shot where it's ridiculously far. So some of the other golfers there are like, hey, dude, Tin Cup, you think you can make it? Go for it. And they all start placing bets. And Sims is like, listen, if you do that, then you're fired. Tin Cup says, screw it. He does it. He makes this impossible shot. He just wails the shit out of this ball. And he makes it perfectly. He gets fired. And that's the end of that whole thing. The next scene we cut to, and we are giving, Roy McAvoy is giving Molly another lesson, and they're talking about life, and he's saying, I bet your boyfriend's a golfer, and needless to say, he starts, showing her how to swing, and while he's doing that, he accidentally grabs her, maybe intentionally grabs her, but to show her how to swing better than a regular player per se. And in walks David Sims, and David Sims sees that, and he's like, hey, get your hands off her ass, excuse me. And she leaves. Later that night in the Winnebago, it's Romeo and Tin Cup, and Tin Cup, is really smitten by this girl, and he's like, man, this is ridiculous. I can't believe she's with that horse's ass. You know, he's such a jerk. He's not a good person. She deserves better. And, Romeo's like, well, you could always just, go out and win the US Open and that'll show her how great you are. Totally sarcastic, totally joking. But Tin Cup's eyes light up and he's like, you know what? That's not a bad idea, Romeo. So, Romeo's laughing at him. He's like, get out of here, dude. You can't keep it together. He said, remember when we were in college and you were playing that professional tournament and you were going to qualify to be a professional player, and if you won the tournament and you took this chance at the last minute and you came up 1 point short and you lost, because of that you lost your chance to become a professional golfer. And Tin Cup's like, yeah, I remember that, but this is a different time and I can do this. So his plan is to win Molly over by becoming eligible for the Open and winning the Open. Unfortunately, we have some stumbling blocks along the way, and that's our next scene. Our next scene, he has to get his golfing equipment out of hock. It's currently being held in a pawn shop. So he meets a local yokel who thinks he's a hot shot at golf, and he bets him. He's like, listen, see this gardening equipment here? He pulls out like a hoe and all this different gardening equipment. I bet that I can beat you with this versus your professional equipment. And the guy's like, well, why would I want to bet you? What do you even have to bet? And he's like, I'll give you my car. He's like, why would I want that piece of shit car? And Tin Cup's like, well, you know what? Here's the thing, dude. You're looking at it as a piece of shit car instead of bragging rights. How you beat legendary striker Tin Cup, and the bragging rights, the story that's going to happen with that whole thing with your friends. Later on in the bar, you'll have something to share. So they have this long little match. Tin Cup comes out victorious. He wins some money and he's able to get his golfing equipment out of the pawn shop. He is still really upset about what he's going to do to try to win Molly over. Besides try to win, the US Open, he's like, what do I do? He's like, I need help. I need therapy. And Romeo's like, what are you talking about? You need therapy. He's like, no, I need help. I need to talk to a shrink. And there's only one shrink in town I can talk to. And Romeo's like, no, you can't talk to the girl that you're into about her. You can't just go up to her and be like, hey, listen, I need help with girl trouble. I need help with girl problems. With the girl that you're interested in. It doesn't work that way. And he's like, but she's the only shrink in town. So he goes into Molly Sims' work and he interrupts a girl that's having like a breakdown in the lobby. And then he's brought into Molly's office and they have a nice little exchange. He's telling her, he's like, listen, he's like, well, I always take chances. He's like, I'm an idiot. I'm the kind of guy that would, if someone bet me to, swim across a river infested with alligators, I'd do it. And he's like, why? Why would I do that? And Molly's like, well, because you are an idiot. There's no reason to do that. He said, you just do it because of your ego. You like to take chances. And she's like, sometimes taking chances is good, but not always, and she's like, why are you here? Like, I don't think you're that much of a mess any more than the rest of us. And he's like, I'm in love with this girl and I don't think she knows I exist. And she's with this real horse's ass of a boyfriend who, hates old people and children, and he's a bad egg. And I'm afraid to ask her out because I think she's not gonna go for me. And Molly's like, well, listen, Roy, you have to take chances. Just like you like to take chances in the golf field and you like to swing your golf club and take all these ridiculous shots. She's like, you have to take those chances in real life too. You have to go walk right up to this girl and say, hey, I'm crazy about you. Give me a chance. And he's like, okay. And he proceeds to tell Molly, he's like, Molly, since the moment I met you, I haven't been thinking about any other girls. In the past, I'd be thinking about how to get into a girl's legs, get laid. And with you, all I've been thinking about is how to get into your heart. And of course, she like blows up. She's like, Roy, what? I didn't know you were talking about me. She's like, I'm in the middle of a relationship, and I've never seen any evidence of this guy being a jerk so far. He's always treated me well. We can't have this. I'm sorry. You have to leave. So she kind of like abruptly pushes him out the door. So later on that night, we see Roy in his Winnebago, and he's, lying down, and you can tell the guy's bummed out, We see Molly come up, and she's like, listen, I just want to apologize to you. I know I gave you this advice about how you should take chances and go for it when it comes to your life, when it comes to love and stuff like that. But obviously I had no idea we were talking about me. She's like, in all honesty, I haven't seen evidence of David Sims treating old people badly or kids badly or anything like that. And I haven't seen the stuff that you're talking about, but I am in a relationship with him and I like him. She's like, but I think I can help you. And he's like, well, how can you help me? He's like, I can't even afford you. I can't afford to go to a therapist. She's like, we can trade services. You can teach me golf lessons, and I'll help you on your game by giving you therapy. So it's not this perfect scenario, for him. He's crazy about her, but he knows it's a compromise, and it's a way to keep her in his life, and maybe something can happen down the road. So, he accepts the deal. And then we cut to the state sectionals, which is one of the big ones in order to qualify for the U.S. Open. It's the one right before it. It's him and it's Romeo, and he's got so much talent, and he's kicking ass through 99% of this tournament. And then towards the end, he starts to get cocky, and he starts wanting to take chances, and he wants the course record. He wants to make eagles and birdies, and Romeo's like, dude, play it safe. This is important. This is going to lead down the road to us getting into the U.S. Open. But Tin Cup's like, no, dude, I got this. And Romeo just fucking snaps, and he literally snaps. He snaps the golf clubs, and him and Roy get into a pissing match until they only have one golf club left to finish the tournament. Romeo says, I can't keep on doing this with you, man. I can't keep on watching you blow up all your chances when you have so much potential and so much talent. And he just storms off. And basically, Roy is left to finish the tournament by himself. He makes the impossible shot because he's Roy McIlroy, and that's all part of his charm and part of his innate talent. And then when he's done, he's sitting out the lounge. Everybody's there except for Romeo. The rest of his crew is there, and Molly's there, and he's like, "Hey, Molly, how do you think I did?" And she's like, "I think you did horrible." And he's like, "What do you mean I did horrible?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, you did well from a gaming perspective. You obviously you won and you got the course record and all that, but you're not thinking things through from a psychological perspective. As a shrink," she said, "you did horrible." So he's kind of down and out about this. Meanwhile, David Sims shows up to pick up Molly, and he sees this conversation, and he's like, "Oh, you screwed up again, huh?" And Roy's like, "No, I didn't screw up, man. I just won, and I just set a record." And they get in a little pissing match, and as guys do when it comes sometimes over the same girl. He's like, Roy's like, I can outshoot you anytime. I can hit further than you any time of the day, and it's Sims. And Sims gets cocky. He's like, "You want to go? Let's go." So they have a little competition just between the two of them, who can hit the ball the farthest. So Roy goes first, and he hits the ball like 227 yards, which is a pretty damn good distance from what I understand in the world of golfing. Now, when it's Sims' turn, Sims proceeds to shift over onto the road. Excuse me, got a little shaky there for a second on my pole. And he hits the ball down the road. So obviously it bounces and it gets tremendous amount of distance. And he wins the bet. So in the process of winning the bet, he gets Tin Cup's car. So things aren't too going good for Tin Cup right now. Yeah, he won the tournament, but he just lost the bet and he embarrassed himself. Cut to the next scene, which brings us to the qualifying tournament for the U.S. Open. And this is kind of a short scene. He just kind of blows through it. He wins. Again, he kicks ass. Afterwards, he comes back to the driving range and he sees that Romeo's finally cooled down and he's back. There's a moment where he apologizes and he says, he's a horse's ass and he's sorry he didn't listen to Romeo. And they make good, and Romeo's back on his side. Then right after that, we have a scene where Molly shows up, and Molly's got the car, and she's like, hey, listen, David didn't really want your car. He just kind of wanted to prove a point. And she sees Roy, and Roy's wearing all the ridiculous equipment that she was wearing in the very beginning. And she's like, why are you wearing that crap, as you called it? And he's like, because my swing is off. I got the shanks. I can't swing worth a shit. And she's like, why? And she's like, well, Romeo seems to think it's because of you. And she's like in shock. She's like, me? He's like, you know how I feel. I just want to get into your heart, And they have this beautiful little exchange, and he brings her home because she drove in with his car. And along the way, they stop by this riverbed, and he's like, you just give me a chance, I'm so much the better guy. And they almost kiss, but it doesn't quite happen. And from there, we actually get into the third act, which is the U.S. Open. On the opening day, we see Roy McIlroy and Romeo, and Roy is still struggling. He's still swinging wildly. Some of the other golfers are like, hey, maybe you might want to think about booking a flight early, because I don't know if you're going to make it for the full 3 days. And Roy's like, listen, dude, back the fuck off, and he talks to Romeo, and Romeo is like, listen, man, you're making yourself look like an ass in front of these people. You can do this. He's like, listen, I want you to follow my instructions exactly. He's like, take your hat and turn it backwards. So he does that. And then I said, I want you to put this golf thing right behind your ear here. The little golf tee right behind your ear. And Roy's like, why would I do that? He's like, I look like a horse's ass. He said, just do it. Now I want you to take a swing. Roy takes a swing and he hits it perfectly. And he's like in shock. And Romeo's like, you know why you just hit the perfect swing right there? You got your game back? You got your game back because you weren't thinking about the woman. You weren't thinking about David Sims or any other shit. You were just thinking about how ridiculous you look and just going for the shot. So they proceed to the next scene where we get to. It's evening. It's the Winnebago. It's the night before the big first day. And Romeo's like, listen, you got to get drunk, man. If you get drunk, you play better. You always do. So they get plastered. Wake up the next morning and they barely make it to the first opening tee. They play the first day, and unfortunately, Romeo's advice was not that great because Roy is in last place at the end of the first day. Then we have a scene right after this where David Sims is being interviewed by the media, and they're asking him why he's such a good person, and he does all these charitable causes and he supports all these things, and he's like, I just do it for the love of the game, and and hopefully I'll have another good game tomorrow. I know I came out ahead today. I'm winning so far, so I just want to do good things and put good things out into the world. It clearly looks like he's bullshitting. He's trying to make himself look altruistic. He's being the nice guy, supposedly. Right after this, he's got a cigarette. He's, trying to de-stress. and you see what looks like it to be a pair of grandparents and a kid. And they're like, "Oh, Mr. Sims, we're such huge fans, and so is our grandson. Can you please sign an autograph?" And he's like, "Listen, you people, do I come to your business and ask for shit when you're off work? No, I'm not on work right now. Now leave me the hell alone." So he's just flat out nasty. And conveniently enough, Molly Sims sees this. So it's confirmed what was told to her by Roy about this David Sims character. So one side note, just for a second, the grandparents are played by Kevin Costner's parents. I just thought that was kind of cool. I found that out. And then we'll get back to the actual story here now, folks. So the next scene, we see Roy, and he's with Romeo, and they're in the local bar that all the golfers go to on the course in the country club, and he's down in the dumps. And Dave Sims walks in, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on, Roy? You know, I'm not looking too good today, are you?" You know, he's just kind of giving him shit, you know, laying into him. And Roy's trying his best to kind of ignore him because he knows that already, obviously. And Molly walks in, and she's like, "Oh, so you," she goes up to David, "So this is how you are, Mr. Altruistic, Mr. Give back to the community, all this crap, but you put a man down when he's not doing well. How dignified is that?" You know, at this point, we kind of get that she's kind of more on Roy's side. She's like, "One of you guys need to act like a dignified man, you know." She's like, "I'm gonna make a bet right now." She's like, "Roy, I want you to take this bet." And she points out, and if you look out the restaurant doors, there's water, and there's this little pier, and there's this little mulligan perched on the pier. And she's like, "Roy, I think you should go ahead and hit that mulligan, that bird, off the pier. I think you can do it, and I'm not leaving until one of you guys acts like a man and does something manly, you know." And it's just a way to boost his confidence, essentially, you know. And he's like apprehensive at first, and he's like, "I'm not doing that." And he's like, "No, you have to do it." And then Dave's like, "Come on," you know. And they kind of goad them into this bet of whether he can do it or not. And a lot of people in the bar, of course, think that he can't, especially Sims, and most people are betting against him. Miraculously enough, of course, he makes a shot, and the bird is hit and taken off the pier, and he flies away. And at this point, you could see Molly's on Roy's side. So Roy's confidence is starting to come back. The next scene we cut to, it's night, it's raining, it's Winnebago, and her and Roy are fooling around and making sweet love. And she's back on his side, you know, and you can see a happy ending for these two. Not to play my hand too early here. So we get to the next day, and the next day, Roy is kicking ass. It's the second day of the U.S. Open. He's coming out ahead. He's still taking chances, but he's also playing it safe a little bit. He gets to the 17th hole, and there's a waterway where the 18th hole would be, and he goes to make this impossible shot because, you know, he's Roy McIlroy. He's all about impossible shots. And unfortunately, after 2 attempts, he doesn't pull it off. So after 2 attempts, he's like, "Listen, I want to play it safe. I'm going to lay it up." He's going to, you know, go the safe route. So he does, and he ends up scoring even with Dave Sims. So he's doing pretty well for himself, especially considering his first day was absolutely horrible. So that night, all of his buddies from Texas come down, and they go to the Waffle House, and they get caught up, and he's having a good time, and he's excited. Again, he's making sweet love to Molly Sims, and it's still raining out. And poor Romeo is outside in the rain. He's like, "Come on, guys, hurry up. I want to it's raining out here, you know." But it's a cute little tender moment. And the next day we cut to the third day of the U.S. Open, and it's basically him and Sims, and they're going back and forth, exchanging insults. But Roy is actually coming out ahead, and at a certain point, he's well ahead, and you can see that David Sims is clearly bothered by this and upset by this. And we get to the 17th hole, and Roy's just looking at this hole, and he's like, I can do this, man. I know it's a tough shot, but I can do this. So he grabs the golf club, and he gives it a swing, and he misses. And he does it again, and he misses. And Romeo's like, dude, you just got to play it safe. Trust me. And he's like, no, man, I got this. So he does this like 10 times, essentially. And finally, like on the 11th time, he's like, Romeo's like, at this point, if you don't lay up and just take the shot, you're like a dead last, and you're not going to qualify for next year's U.S. Open. You're going to have to go through the whole state sectionals tournament again and the U.S. Open qualifier again to be eligible. But Roy, at this point, he's trusting his gut. He's like, I can get this. And of course, he swings, and there's this tense moment. Of course, you're wondering, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? He makes the impossible shot. The crowd roars, and essentially, he is in last place, but he still qualifies for next year's U.S. Open. And more importantly, he made this amazing shot that just doesn't happen, and automatically, he's granted legendary status, in the golf community. He's beating himself up a little bit. But Molly's like, listen, forget about winning the U.S. Open. This is the kind of thing people are going to talk to for years about with their friends. It's just incredible, And we finally conclude with our ending scene, and it's Molly and Roy, and they're at her house, and we're lying down on the couch, and he's like, who would have thought a girl like you would end up with a guy like me? And she's like, I never thought I'd end up with a washed up golf pro, but you know what, these things happen, and we're crazy about each other, essentially. Also, there's a happy ending for Romeo. Romeo finds a girl as well, and that, my friends, is the conclusion to Tin Cup. Now, I might have glossed over a couple things, so I apologize. There's a lot of scenes in this movie. There's a lot of connected pieces that connect the whole story to make it a sum of its whole, so to speak. But it's a good one. It's very well directed by Ron Shelton, who did Bull Durham and a bunch of other movies. And what's cool about this movie is, like I said in the beginning, a lot of people fluff this off as just simply a romantic comedy, and I know at its core it is. For me, I always connected with this movie personally on a deeper level, because I feel like there's more to it than that. If you watch the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about, hopefully. And it's the story about redemption. It's a story about the long shot. It's a guy that is a washed up golf pro, taking a second chance at life. Obviously he has the innate ability, but just pulling himself out of the gutter and taking a shot, taking the big chance. I am someone, ever since I was probably younger, I've always wanted to write, and then I wanted to direct. I wanted to direct comic books when I was a kid, and then when I got older, that transitioned into screenplays, and then eventually it transitioned into wanting to act and do all these other things. And I had a couple little opportunities, when I was in my 20s, I did a small acting role in a horror movie. And then, life got in the way, and I got kind of caught up with just the grind of everyday stuff, and I didn't really pursue the creative stuff as much as I wanted to. Then when my early 30s came, I took a filmmaking class. I directed a short film, and the teacher I became good friends with, a guy named Darren DeBarry, a good friend, and became friends with some of the people in the class. And I met some of his friends, and the next thing you know, I was doing small acting roles in short films. I was working behind the scenes on a couple of features, doing everything from sound, to production assistant, to just whatever needed to get done. And I did that for a few years, and I had a good time with it. And I've kind of connected with this movie with me just because, like, it was a little bit later. And I was a little bit down the dumps, about like, hey, about the whole idea of like not pursuing what you're interested in creatively. And I think this movie really is about taking the chances, just saying the hell with it and going for it, and that's what I connect with it. It's like Don Quixote, chasing after the windmills, you know what I mean, with his trusty sidekick Sanchez. It's same thing with this. It's like going for it. Even this right here, what I'm doing for you guys, I'm still doing some writing. I haven't done the filmmaking stuff as much, or the acting, because the opportunities haven't been there as much, and I've been busy with life. But just me doing this is a way to kind of connect with the creative juices that are flowing and put something creatively back into the world. And I know some episodes are better than others. I'm trying to make sure they're all great for you guys. And like I said, I am going to eventually, like I said, get some editing equipment and start doing a little bit of editing as well. I'm just waiting on that. But yeah, I really connected with this movie for that simple theme of redemption, and the theme of just taking chances, even if it's scary, even if it's risky, just putting yourself out there and trying to tap into those creative juices. And the same thing with Tin Cup. I know it's a fictional story, although loosely based on a real character, but the idea of just going for it, so anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my review, and if you have not seen Tin Cup, by all means, please seek this out, guys, because it's well worth your time. Just a couple plugs I want to give out. Number one, my beautiful fiance, Jessica Fernari. You can find her on Instagram. I'm going to give her credits in the link down below. meowchirawr, amazing artist, and yes, she's my fiance, but regardless, she's still an amazing artist, and you guys would love her stuff, I promise you. As well as her, I want to put a shout out to a couple podcasts. Number one, I want to set a shout out to The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. Will and Sam are amazing, and they put out amazing new content every week. And then as well as them, I want to shout out to Not a Bomb, Brad and Troy. Those guys focus on films that bombed at the box office, and these guys are also amazing and definitely worth seeking out. And then finally, one that I've started listening to over the last month or so. I picked up episodes here and there and start listening to them, and these guys are also great. And these guys are Justin and Jose over at Watch Skip Plus. These guys are also really entertaining, and they put out really awesome content as well. So guys, that's my review of Tin Cup, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon with episode 9.